Well, now tax cuts by August looking nearly impossible. So what will that mean for stocks that have been expecting them and this rally that's been pricing them in? Let's ask Jessica Tarlov, Dave Maney, and Scott Shellady. Scott, to you first. What are we looking at if these tax cuts don't come?
Well, I think that's pretty bad news. Number one, we're here because of sentiment and confidence. But I'll be the first person to tell you, you can't go downstairs to the bar and buy a beer with sentiment and confidence, right? Show me the money. So we need to get something done to stay where we're at, right? Because I don't think it's arguable if you take a look at the economic indicators that we've had recently. We've had a kind of a good one on Friday, but ultimately the Citigroup Economic Surprise Index, which measures how well we've done up against expectations, is to a low level back of 2012, the middle of Barack Obama. So we're not adding up. Things aren't adding up when it comes to the economy. We're here because of sentiment and confidence, because we think something's going to get done. They have to do it. And I'm sick of talking about have to do it. It's got to get done. If these people were working for me, they'd be fired. We can't go downstairs and buy a beer with a good meeting. We had a great meeting. I'm done with it.
Dave, well, to that point, stocks are still on a tear. But if you look at things like auto sales down last month for Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors. Consumer spending up only 0.1% in the month of May. The signs out there are that the economy is looking a little shaky.
Well, I think the signs are that consumers at least are taking their foot off the throttle a little bit. And the notion that we have to do something specifically to prop up the markets, or that the markets are so wound around the axle, like the notion that the people in the market are not paying close attention to the news and the analysis and the state of the politics, i.e. that they think it's a slam dunk that the tax cuts will pass and that therefore the markets will collapse if they don't pass. That's a fallacy. I mean, they're watching this show, they're watching closely, they've got their finger on the pulse, and it is by no means a certainty those cuts are going to pass and the market's doing okay.
Well, Jessica, to that point, I'm going to point out some Republican senators who are now saying, oh, you can leave in place that tax hike from Obamacare on investment income. It's only 3.8%. You're actually hearing that from conservatives. That can't be good news for the market.
Well, no, and it can't be good news for Republicans, actually, as we head into an election season, which is, what I think about all the time. I think the real problem here is that President Trump and the Republicans decided to do health care first instead of going after tax reform, which really was the big promise of the campaign. That's why people put a CEO businessman in office, because they thought he would jumpstart the economy here. I think that investors in the stock market are certainly going to take a hit if they see that this tax reform isn't coming. Obviously, Steve Mnuchin is not going to get his promise to Neil Cavuto at this point, especially if people are going to go on vacation. But we've yet to see how long this kind of confidence can go on in light of complete stalemate in Washington. And I completely agree with the point that everybody is paying attention. There's this idea, that if Donald Trump, with his art of the dealing, can do anything and it won't have an effect. But everyone is reading his tweets. Everyone is understanding what's going on in Washington. And I'm thinking back to this poll that came out last month from a Yale CEO summit that found that over 50% of CEOs and business executives are giving him an F as his grade and another 20% a D. That's not what you'd expect from the businessman president.
But Scott, this comes down to a Republican-controlled House and Senate, and the bar was set even lower for them. They didn't have much to jump over because they've been promising repeal and replace on health care. They've been promising these tax cuts. Shoot, Paul Ryan had a plan that he rolled out over a year ago. So we weren't ready to go with that. And you know what? They weren't. All the rank and file in Congress, they're not on board with that tax plan that he put together over a year ago.
No, and what a time to grandstand. I mean, at least the Republicans could take a lesson from the Democrats and band together and get something done just to get something done. Now, I don't want something done badly just to get something done, but I think some action would be really nice for the American people to see. I mean, we're almost going back to that Obama-esque hopium, where the markets are hoping something good's going to happen, and the rest of the people are hoping something good's going to happen. Because I tell you what, I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. I'm a common sensican, and I've got an agricultural background which tells me that things aren't adding up. You look at the economic indicators, and we are missing day in and day out. And yes, earnings are great, but if earnings were that great, wouldn't we have a GDP that was flying flying off the shelves and really high? No, we still can't grow. So we have a fundamental problem, which is still not being looked at because we're still all smoking the hopium.
And Scott, I think, you know what? Lean hogs, I think, was one of the best performing asset classes so far this year.
There you go.
Right? I think. Thank you guys so much. Dave,
Thanks.
Jessica.
Happy 4th of July.
Yes, to you all. And
See ya.
Scott, happy 4th.